In today's video, another major victory for President Trump and his push for mass deportations. This one involves the executive branch immigration judges who can no longer grant bonds to migrants who enter the U.S. without authorization. It's a move that strengthens immigration enforcement and signals a clear shift in how illegal entry cases will be handled moving forward.
Now, immigration judges try to be independent and they pride themselves on that, but they are in a very unique position simply by falling under the executive branch. Now, as you mentioned there, 139 immigration judges have been fired, taken an early out offer, or been involuntarily transferred. September marked the highest number of terminations with around 24 people dismissed. Now, I spoke to one of those immigration judges who was dismissed in September, and what she described to me was sitting in her courtroom in San Francisco in early September. It was her third case of the day. She was in the middle of proceedings taking notes on her laptop. When she looked down, though, there was an email that had come through with the subject line, notice of termination. And so she excused herself from the courtroom, tried to catch up on what was going on, came back into the courtroom and simply said, we cannot continue with this case. A case, by the way, that had taken several years just to get in front of her. And she had to just adjourn the hearing, went straight back to her office and packed up her things because she had been terminated, she says, without knowing why. It was she shared the notice with me. It was very brief and just saying that she had been dismissed.
The reasons for these firings are simple. Too many judges were playing political games instead of upholding the law. You had judges that were granting asylum to illegal migrants at massively inflated rates, where for some of these judges, they were approving 30, 40, 50% higher than their colleagues with cases that came before them. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a tough job. Nobody's denying that. And sure, some of these migrants have heartbreaking stories, but empathy doesn't override the law. If a case doesn't meet the legal standard for asylum, then the answer still has to be no. Because the very moment you allow emotion to replace fairness, you're telling the entire world that all you need is a sad story to get into America. And that's exactly how you create an incentive for more illegal crossings. And so let's go to the next clip. A few of those fired judges are speaking out. Take a listen.
George Pappas, Jennifer Payton, and Carla Espinoza were all fired this month by email. They'd been federal immigration judges who together ruled on thousands of cases in Chicago and Boston. Did they give you a reason why in your email?
My email was 3 sentences. I had no cause, I had no explanation.
We as judges were in fear, we were concerned, and that makes it very difficult to be impartial. We were not succumbing to that pressure, but it does feel like pressure.
Were you ever told how to rule?
Yes.
What'd they say?
They told me, grant the motions to dismiss. This is when ICE was roaming the courthouses, because if we dismiss the case, that person that responded then leaves the court vulnerable to immediate apprehension and expedited removal.
Just so people understand, you grant a motion to dismiss the case.
Correct.
Now the individual what?
They are no longer in proceedings.
Once they left the courtroom, more often than not, they will be handcuffed and led away by the ICE officers.
Take a step, back up, back up.
CBS News has reported on the numerous cases where ICE agents detained immigrants as they exited their court hearings. With about 600 immigration judges left, courts now face a backlog of nearly 4 million cases. President Trump says it could take 200 years to resolve all these cases.
It is my opinion that this administration could give a hoot about the backlog.
The administration says repeatedly, these folks are here illegally, that's breaking the law, they gotta go. Do they have a point?
Well, that's why they're in proceedings in court. There is law that we're applying, and they might have to go, they might not.
Have you ever had a moment that changed your life? One accident, one employer who doesn't care, one hospital bill you couldn't pay. That's how quick life can change. And when it does, you realize something fast. The big companies, the insurance giants, they don't care about you. They've got teams of lawyers whose only job is to protect their bottom line. But who's protecting you? There's a reason why it feels like traffic always jams when you're running late. Just like there's a reason Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm. For over 35 years, Morgan & Morgan has fought for the people, not the powerful. With 1,000 plus attorneys and more than 100 offices nationwide, they've recovered over $25 billion for more than 500,000 clients just like you. Whether you're a 41-year-old family man in Florida, struck by a driver who ran a red light, Morgan & Morgan secured a $9.3 million verdict. Or a father and Little League coach who suffered lasting injuries in a car crash, Morgan & Morgan secured a $6.1 million verdict. When you hire them, it's like hiring a legal army that has your back. Starting a claim is simple. You can get started right now from your phone. No hassle. You can click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen to see if you have a claim. Their fee is free unless they win. Because when life changes in an instant, you deserve a law firm that's ready to fight for you. It all made sense once I heard that two of those judges in that clip were from Chicago. Because look at everything that's happening right there now. You got the mayor, Brandon Johnson, and the governor. They are doing everything to obstruct ICE agents from doing their job. You got a judge who recently ruled that ICE agents can actually be arrested if they detain an illegal migrant outside of the courthouse. And so you have these judges who are claiming that they don't know why they were fired. But then when you look at their track record, you find out it's because they weren't doing their job. So let's take a look at Carla Espinosa, because she just said right there, sometimes they stay, sometimes they do not. And so let's take a look at her track record, because it is public information. So let's take a look. It says compared to Judge Espinosa's denial rate of 20.9%. So what that means is 20.9% she denies. 80% of the time she grants. Immigration court judges across the country denied 57.7% of asylum claims during the same period. While judges at Chicago's immigration court, where Judge Espinosa decided these cases, denied asylum to 42.1%. So she's even more radical than the other woke judges in Chicago, who are drastically granting asylum at a much higher rate than the national average when it comes to judges across the country. And so you have ICE agents. We've seen it in the news in Chicago. They're finding these criminals. They're finding people who are in this country illegally. They get in front of Judge Espinosa, and 80% of the time she's saying, you got asylum, you can stay. So the idea that she's clueless to why she was fired is just a lie. And so there's that. And people will say that ICE is being cruel and inhumane, but let's get the facts straight. These individuals had the opportunity to self-deport with a paid plane ticket and a $1,000 in assistance to voluntarily leave. And then if you want to reapply and try to go through the right measures as far as to enter the country, you do it that way. Some people did take that opportunity. Others didn't. And so the Trump administration isn't having it. And with that being said, let's go ahead and move to the main story. Take a listen.
Cheryl, it was a quiet decision released last month that could impact millions of people in the country. A change to how immigration laws are enforced could mean anyone arrested will remain detained until they are deported. But some attorneys are now pushing back. This week, the federal government said in court that since July, more than 1,800 people have been arrested in the Chicago area. But having their day in court is not a guarantee. The immigration court is convoluted. It does not fall under the judicial branch. It falls under the executive branch. Separate from criminal court, a person's rights are much more limited. ABC 7 chief legal analyst Gil Sofer.
The proceedings in an immigration court, they're not criminal, they're civil. The question isn't whether someone has committed a crime. The question is whether they can be deported.
I mean, the crime is simple. It's illegal entry. It's against the law, period. No amount of spin from activist lawyers or politically motivated judges can change that. But that's exactly what we're seeing, people trying to twist the law in order to fit their politics. And that's a problem when you start redefining what's illegal based on how you feel about it. You're no longer enforcing justice, you're enforcing ideology.
and the rights are different.
Now, a new immigration court directive could keep people detained much longer before they're deported. In September, the Board of Immigration Appeals, the top administrative body which interprets and applies immigration laws, released a new decision. For the first time in American history, the court ruled immigration judges can no longer grant bond for undocumented immigrants who enter the U.S. without authorization, all but guaranteeing mandatory detention for those detained.
It is a monumental decision. It's a change in approach for sure.
DHS calling the ruling, quote, a big win for our ICE attorneys, securing our ability to detain illegal aliens until they are deported. But immigration advocates and attorneys say it's a total sea change.
It overturned decades of case law, of regulations and laws.
Judge Payton is a former assistant chief immigration judge who was fired by the Trump administration this past July. She says without cause. Now she's in private practice and says undocumented people seeking a bond hearing have to hire an attorney like her to file petitions in federal court outside of immigration court to try to get relief.
Demanding that the federal courts review the decision of the immigration court and tell them that they're wrong and they should hold a bond hearing.
It felt very dehumanizing.
Tonight at 10 p.m., the I-Team looks at one family challenging this new court directive, all to release their father.
The moment they put him in a van, we didn't know where he was going.
Now, the ACLU has sued the Trump administration over its no-bond policy from being enforced. A hearing in that case is scheduled a week from today.
All because these immigration courts are under the executive, not the judicial branch of government.
Absolutely. Different set of rules, different set of evidence, and different rights for the people coming before the judge. Of course, you're going to hear much more from Judge Payton tonight at 10 o'clock.
Yeah, I think this is a net positive. It does a few things. One, it deters people from entering the country illegally when you realize that if you do get captured, you're no longer going to have that possibility of being let out on bond where you're still able to be in the country, remain here in America while you go back and forth between your court appearances. It also closes up a bit of a loophole where now you're not able to disappear. You show up at one hearing and then, you don't show up after that. You MIA. It closes that loophole up also where now you have to remain in custody, you remain detained, and you don't get to go anywhere until you have been ruled on. And what that does is help exactly what we've seen time and time again. Those stories where ICE make an arrest and it turns out the person had a final order of removal years ago, but somehow they're still in the country. And this is the executive branch. It's done differently. The same amount of rights you have is going to be different under the executive branch. This is why it's very specific for immigration, because we're not specifically talking about people who are citizens, but since they're on American soil, kind of fall somewhere where they get certain things, but not everything, which sounds pretty reasonable to me. And this is where you had those silly videos with Don Lemon who kept going around talking about due process. They need to have a warrant. They can't just take you away, not understanding this isn't under the judicial court. This is under the executive branch. And so it's a completely different set of rules as far as that these people have to play by. And this is necessary because, remember, we're not talking about situations where this is innocent until proven guilty. Unauthorized entry into the country is a crime. And so that's already established, because you can't have on one hand ICE going out making all these arrests, capturing people who have violent criminal backgrounds, who entered the country illegally, and then they get in front of a judge and the judge is saying, well, sounds like your story sounds pretty reasonable to me, so you can stay. I'll give you asylum. And so it cuts all of that out, and agents aren't out there searching for people who should have been removed already. But let me know your thoughts. Drop your comments down below. As always, you enjoyed the content, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more breakdowns just like this. And don't forget, stick around for the next video. Bernie Sanders suffering humiliation after being confronted about voting no to end the government shutdown. Stick around for that, and I'll see you next time.